The song was passed down through generations. Then the nets came. One moment, he was chasing herring through a silver blur of bubbles. The next, he was alone, dragged from the water, torn from his mother's side, and lowered into a concrete box. They called it captivity. For Kraken, it was a silent collapse of everything he had ever known. Transferred from facility to facility, he was measured, branded, renamed, and displayed. He learned commands, but never trust. He performed tricks, but never forgot. Ocean Realm, trainers were warned. Kraken had a past. There were reports. A trainer who fell into his tank years earlier never resurfaced. The death was labeled an accident. No one spoke of it. Legend followed him like a shadow. Kraken didn't. He often his movement was deliberate. He ignored cues. Just misunderstood. It was her. What she didn't know, what no one dared to say, was that Kraken hadn't forgotten. Never stopped listening to it. February 16th dawned like any other. Clear skies, water, and the hum of anticipation in the air. It was a Sunday matinee, the kind that drew families in droves. Tourists sipped sodas, children clutched plush orca toys, and the stadium at Ocean Realm buzzed with chatter. Behind the curtain, Rachel Langford stood in her wetsuit, calm, focused, routine. She had done this performance dozens of times. Kraken had been rehearsing well that week, responsive, cooperative, even playful. Staff noted it with cautious optimism, but Rachel smiled. She believed the trust they had built was finally taking root. The show began like clockwork. Lights shimmered across the surface of the pool. Music played through hidden speakers, and the crowd leaned forward in excitement. Kraken preached on cue, spraying a wave of salt water onto the front rows. Laughter followed. Rachel raised her arm in a fluid motion, the signal for spin. Kraken obeyed. Perfectly. They moved together in near silence, their language invisible to the audience but rich with meaning. Rachel gave the nod for the finale, a dramatic side-by-side dive, followed by a synchronized breach. She stepped closer to the edge, reaching out, poised for the final gesture. And then it happened. In a blink, the air changed. Kraken pivoted, silent and swift. His jaws closed around the base of her ponytail. Not harsh, but firm. For a fraction of a second, it looked almost gentle. Then he pulled. The water swallowed her before the audience could process what they had seen. Gasps erupted. Some clapped, thinking it was part of the act. Others froze, uncertain. But Rachel didn't surface, and Kraken didn't let go. What began as a celebration of wonder had just crossed an invisible line, and the sea was about to speak louder than it ever had before. The first screams didn't come from the trainers. They came from a child in the third row, pointing as the water violent, white foam erupting where serenity had just been. Rachel Langford had vanished beneath the surface, and Kraken was thrashing with unnatural speed, his massive body coiling in the tank like a storm confined to glass. At first, many thought it was a stunt, a breathtaking finale, a dramatic dive. But seconds passed, then a minute, and Rachel did not return. Panic spread like wildfire. Parents shielded their children's eyes. Others began recording, unsure of what they were witnessing. What they were witnessing was a killing. Kraken refused every signal. Trainers blew emergency whistles, slapped the water, tossed fish in desperate attempts to distract him. But nothing broke his focus. He gripped Rachel's body with terrifying precision, dragging her deeper, spinning her violently, then letting her float just long enough to gasp before pulling her under again. The stadium filled with chaos. The music cut off mid-note. Emergency lights flashed red. Sirens wailed, echoing off the concrete like warning bells from another world. Behind the scenes, staff scrambled into crisis mode. They'd trained for this. Orca aggression. Trainers submerged. But drills couldn't prepare them for the sight of Kraken breaching with Rachel's limp form trailing beside him. Arms outstretched, hair splayed, wetsuit torn. He wasn't performing. He was holding on. Every second stretched into eternity. Nets were deployed. Divers ready to intervene, only to retreat. But Kraken circled back with deadly intent. Trainers shouted his name, used every cue, every lure, every ounce of hope. But it was useless. He wouldn't release her. Not because he didn't understand, but because, maybe for the first time, he didn't care. 30 minutes passed before Kraken was lured into the isolation pool. Only then could they recover what remained of Rachel. She was unrecognizable. The autopsy would later describe massive blunt force trauma, multiple fractures, severe internal injuries, and signs of drowning. But no report could capture what it felt like in that moment. To see a woman so deeply devoted to the sea be taken by it in front of hundreds of helpless witnesses. Ocean went silent, not just for the rest of the day, but in a way that would ripple across years. The audience left in stunned silence. The seats emptied. The laughter ended. The illusion shattered. And Kraken, he floated alone in the center of the pool, unmoving, as if nothing had happened. As if perhaps something long suppressed had finally surfaced. And now, the silence could return. The stadium emptied in a hush, like a funeral procession without a casket. And final announcements.